Hello and namaste to you all. Hopefully you've done the pre-task for this one where you should have been looking at Juliet's relationship with the mother and Juliet's relationship with the nurse. So hopefully you've completed that because you'll need those notes for this lesson. So we're going to be exploring Juliet and the nurse. What is their relationship and how can we tell this? So we're looking at how Shakespeare presents the relationship between these two characters. Now, hopefully you look back at that Act 1, Scene 3 to give you some idea of what these two characters were like previously. If I just run you by some very key points now, and you can add to your notes that you've already got. So if we look at Juliet's relationship with her mother, first of all, okay, I've put 4 quotes here that support what we're saying. So she says, "Nurse, come back again" in Act 1, Scene 3. Which shows she doesn't really know how to speak to Juliet by herself and needs the nurse there, wants the nurse's support, perhaps doesn't like being alone with Juliet. We don't really know, but it just indicates that she needs the nurse there with her, all right? She also says, "Thou knowest my daughter's of a pretty age," which shows she doesn't actually know her daughter's age and relies on the nurse to tell her that. She also says, "Tell me, daughter Juliet, how stands your dispositions to be married?" So I've put here, she doesn't really have much idea about her daughter's feelings, doesn't really know her views on marriage, so sort of has to ask her these sort of questions, which seems a bit distant from Juliet, and obviously not something that Juliet doesn't particularly want to talk about. And then she also says, "Speak briefly, can you like of Paris's love?" This fact she says, "Speak briefly," shows that she wants the conversation to be over with, really. It's sort of quick and to the point. It's almost a business for her, isn't it? Do you want to marry Paris? Let's get this sorted. And we also know that the mother is one of the people that tries to force her to love Paris and force her to marry him in that instance. In contrast, we have the nurse, who we know was Juliet's wet nurse, so is quite close to Juliet. She says, "I can tell her age unto an hour," so she knows everything about Juliet, including the exact time she was born. So it's a lot more precise and a lot more detail than Juliet's actual mother, than Lady Capulet. "Thou wast the prettiest babe that e'er I nursed." So she's quite complimentary about Juliet, and she's quite proud to be her nurse. Calls her pretty. Is proud to have been the one that got to wet nurse her. Okay. Then she says, "And I might live to see thee married once. I have my wish." So rather than Lady Capulet, who it seems quite business orientated with the marriage, the nurse seems to be quite passionate about Juliet marrying, and sort of sees it as a wish. Is proud, something she wants to see. Okay, that she seems to care about Juliet getting married. And then when Paris is mentioned, the nurse says, "A man, young lady. Lady, such a man as all the world. Why, he's a man of wax." So she goes on to say how attractive Paris is and seems quite excited about the concept. You can see that through the exclamation mark there. It just seems to be, she tries to engage Juliet a little bit more and speak to her in a certain way that perhaps connects a bit more, as we can see there, okay? And then finally she says, "Seek happy nights to happy days." And it's quite clear she wants Juliet to be happy, okay, and wants her to do the right thing that she is happy with. And we see that throughout the play, really, that she's really supportive of Juliet. And the fact she's gone to talk to Romeo is a key example of this, all right? So we've got some quite contrasting facts between the two characters there, between the nurse and Lady Capulet. So we're looking at the scene now. You will have to read that scene yourself, but it's the scene where the nurse arrives and tells Juliet Romeo's news. But before she gets to the point of telling Juliet news, the two of them play some games with each other, and we'll explore some of those and we'll look at some of the language now. So what we've got is when the nurse arrives, in several of Juliet's lines, she's desperate to get the news of what Romeo has said and with the nurse. And in order to do this, she tries to flatter the nurse. We saw that in that previous PowerPoint that I did for you, where she calls her honey nurse, so sweet. And that's repeated throughout these. And here's 3 examples that I picked out for you. She goes, "Good, sweet nurse, and I pray thee speak good nurse." And she also says, "Sweet, sweet, sweet nurse." Now, look at the use of repetition in similar words. She is trying to really sweet talk this nurse. And the fact she calls her good nurse is emphasising that, and the triple use of the word sweet, again, in her sort of desperation and almost over flattering her, trying desperately to get there. "Oh, you look lovely. Please, sweet nurse, please tell me the answers that I need to hear." Okay, but it also gives us the impression that Juliet perhaps has done this before and she knows how to get on the nurse's good side. She's probably aware that sweet talking and flattering the nurse will get her the answers that she wants and that she's after. Okay. Whereas the nurse plays a different game with Juliet. The nurse is winding Juliet up. So the nurse has really important information from Romeo, and that's about when he's going to marry Juliet. And Juliet is so desperate for this that the nurse plays a bit of game with her and deliberately withholds the information to wind Juliet up. And she talks about loads of different things and changes the conversation. And complains and does all sorts, but refuses to tell Juliet the answer that she's looking for. And we see this because she says, "I am weary, give me leave a while, fie how my bones ache, what a jaunts have I." So jaunts about journey, okay, she had a bouncy journey, a frightful journey, okay, bumpy, exhausting, that's what jaunts basically is telling us. So she's there, gets desperate with information, and she's there going, "Oh, my bones ache. Oh, I've had such a difficult journey. Oh, leave me alone. I'm tired." Okay, rather than saying the information. She also says at one point, "Jesus, what haste? Can you not stay a while? Do you not see that I am out of breath?" So she says to Juliet, "I can't tell you that. I'm out of breath. Give me a while. Stop being so hasty. Stop being so impatient. Give me a chance to breathe." And then later throughout this scene, she does other different ones. These are just 5 of them that I've picked out. But she says, "Oh, what have you dined at home?" So starts talking about dinner instead. She also says, "Oh, my back on the other side. Oh, my back, my back." So it's complaining about how her back aches at one point. It gives the impression in the film version, the Baz Luhrmann one, we actually see Juliet massaging her back, trying to comfort her in that sense. So that could indicate that as a bit of stage direction there as well. And then she says, "Where is your mother?" So she starts asking Juliet about where Lady Capulet is. But as you can see, all of these are not the answer that Juliet's looking for. Nothing to do with Romeo and Romeo's message. So you could understand perhaps why Juliet's getting a little bit more impatient. And you can see that the nurse is deliberately winding Juliet up there. So, if you remember rightly, the nurse says at one point, "Do you not see that I am out of breath?" And Juliet has the best response to this. Juliet says, "How art thou out of breath when thou hast breath. This is not a breast reference, I'm afraid. How art thou out of breath when thou hast breath to say to me that thou art out of breath?" So she's saying, well, how on earth can you be out of breath when you've got enough breath in you to say that you're out of breath? Therefore, tell me what I need to hear, okay? She also says, "The excuse that thou dost make in this delay is longer than the tale that thou dost excuse. Is thy news good or bad? Answer to that." So she's saying all the excuses the nurse is making up is taking up more time than it would have been to actually just tell her the news. Again, showing impatience, okay? Calling an excuse the word longer. All these things indicate time and that Juliet is desperate to hear what Romeo has said. And she also wonders, is it good or bad news? So she's quite anxious about this. And we see that again through this overuse of questions, desperately trying to get the answer out, okay? So as you can see, this purple box at the bottom uses lots of questions throughout the scene, trying to force the information from the nurse. So come, what says Romeo is another example of that. Shakespeare is demonstrating that she's desperate to know what Romeo says, and she ranges from trying to flatter the nurse to snapping at her and being quite impatient and at times quite rude. So, if we were to sum this up then, Juliet and the nurse, what is their relationship like? Okay, and how can we tell this? So, they clearly know each other really well. Okay, the nurse knows exactly how to wind up Juliet and feels comfortable winding her up and playing a game with her. Juliet knows lots of different tactics which clearly normally work in order to get the nurse to speak. So she flatters her, she'd be rude at some point, she does all these different things to try and get the answer from what she wants. So what you need to consider with the nurse, the fact she's comfortable winding Juliet up is interesting because obviously she's a paid position, isn't she, a nurse? She's there to look after Juliet and the Capulets pay her to do that. Well, I presume they pay her. So what we've got here is this idea that the fact she's comfortable. Perhaps this isn't a normal way that an employed member of staff would behave. So they're obviously quite close, and we know that they've known each other a long time because she's known her since she was born. But it sort of builds this interesting relationship between the two of them. And also we can see that Juliet can be really rude and impatient with the nurse, yet she doesn't seem to take any offence with it at all. They seem to be very comfortable being themselves with each other, which perhaps shows they've got quite a strong and trusting relationship. But above all, that Juliet trusts the nurse to keep her secret, that that the nurse has gone off to do this, talk to a Montague of all people to find out where they get married. So she obviously trusts the nurse to keep these secrets. So, your task, okay? So spend the next 10 or so minutes doing this for me. Could you draw up this table? And this is sort of summarising what you've learned in this section. So you've got a column for Juliet, a column for the nurse, and I want you to pick out 3 quotes from that sequence which demonstrates how they're behaving, how they're acting, what they're doing in this scene. So I gave you an example there, sweet, sweet, sweet nurse, that Juliet is using repetition and flattery to try and make the nurse feel good, so she can retract that information that she wants. Then you do the same for the nurse, try and get 3, you may get more than this, but 3 for each character, and then I want you to think about what do we learn about their relationship, what are the top 3 things that we learn about these 2 characters. So hopefully that will make sense. If you can complete that, that'd be brilliant. If you are extra great, there's an extension task for you, okay? And that extension task is I'd like you to write a response to that question. Juliet and the nurse, what is their relationship and how can we tell? So you can then use your table to structure your response about what their relationship is like in that scene. And if you really want to push that answer, so a level 8s and 9s, you may want to consider linking back to what we know from Act 1, Scene 3 as well to enhance your answer. Hopefully that all makes sense. Any questions, feel free to email me or one of the teachers, and we will try and help you with whatever your question may be. And that is all that is left to be said with this one. I'm just going to shut this video down. And yeah, email any questions, email us your response, and we can check them. Thank you very much.